Welcome to the Romance Track here at Continual. And tonight we're talking about romance with the fae and fairies and all kinds of fairy realm stuff. So hold on tight. We're going to have a great panel. But first, I'd like my panelists to please introduce themselves, starting with Isabelle.
My name is Isabelle Hardestry. I am a writer and I love to write about fantasy. This is my book, Jade's Awakening. That's the first of a series, Jade's Awakening, Jade's Ascent, and Jade's Paradox. And I also have The Witch of Bellfleur. I'm originally from Miami, and that's woven in most of my books somehow. And I love to be here. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you. And Deb?
Hi, I'm Deb Marlowe. I write Regency historical romance, and I do have one series of shorts that is, I was invited to take part in a haunted castle in Cornwall, but I am kind of not into horror. So I was like, well, I would love to do pixies. So that is how I ended up here tonight. I have a pixie series, Cornish, or as they call them in Cornwall, piskies.
Mm-hmm. Very true. And Gerri?
I am Gerri Russell. I write Scottish historical romance, and this is my first series that I'm delving into with the Fae. It doesn't come out until 2022, but I've been finishing the books up so that they can all come out together. But it's been fun to delve into that world. Scotland is just full of folklore about fairies of all different kinds, and I found a little niche in one of the clans that I'm writing about that has a lot of fairy lore attached to it. So I've been utilizing that for storylines, which has been really fun. So,
well, that all sounds cool. I know we've got a lot to talk about. So, and everybody mentioned this without coming straight at it, but that there are so many different kinds of fairies mentioned in all the legend and lore, from pixies to full-grown people to all kinds of creatures that are fae and elven and fairy. And so as you were planning your series, how did you decide which part of the fae you wanted to write about? And you've touched on it just slightly, but I'd love to hear more. Gerri, let's go around the other direction this time.
Well, mine was pretty easy because like I said, the legend that I'm writing around is with the Clan MacLeod, and legend has it that they were gifted a fairy flag by the fairies. And there's three legends surrounding it, three different fae legends around it, but they've decided that they believe in one of these as the main source. And how can you argue with the clan? But the one that they've decided that is the most true is that a fairy came to one of the clan lairds in the 4th century, and they fell in love, and they wanted to be together, but they went to her father said no, then they were still in love, and she was sad, and so he finally said, yes, you can come for a year and a day. So of course she came, got pregnant, had a baby, had to go back, left the child, and made the laird promise that the child would never cry. Well, of course, she left, and Dad was sad, so the clan had a party, and of course the nursemaid that was with the child left him alone, and he started crying. So the fairy mother came back, wrapped the baby in this fairy flag, and it had magical powers. But then it says that the legend says that if you wave the flag 3 times, you can only wave it 3 times. When you wave it 3 times, the fairy army would come and help save the day for whatever they needed it for. And there's lots of great legends around that. But if I have a human who's marrying a fairy, they kind of have to be human size to make this romance work. So so that was kind of decided for me. So my fairies are large and mostly from nature, because that's kind of where the mythology with that legend of the fairy flag came from. So I used that.
Okay. How about you, Deb?
Well, There are legends of, so I was invited, like I said, to write in this anthology series, and the haunted castle is in Cornwall. And there are, you know, everybody kind of says, oh yes, Cornish pixies or Cornish piskies, but there actually isn't a whole lot of information out there about them. There are not some that are meant to be in the mines. They're called knockers. And they, if the miners would take down, you know, when they had their lunch and everything, they would set aside little bits for the knockers, and in return, the knockers, and their ale, of course, and in return, the knockers would knock and warn them if there was going to be a collapse. But that doesn't really work with my, you know, with the haunted castle, you know, story. So I basically got to make up my own race of pixies, which was great fun. So mine are also, mine are small though. They are not interacting physically with, they are not the hero or the heroine. My Regency ladies and gentlemen and lords are the heroes and the heroines, and the pixies are small, and they practice nature-based magic. And they live in a barrow in the forest near the castle. And I have massive amounts of fun with them as they alternately help along or interfere with the romances that are going on. So it's really is a lot of fun. I've loved creating their magic and their lore and the rules and that they follow, and all the ways that they mess with people, and it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Isabelle.
And for my story, similar to Deb, I was invited to, there was an anthology opening based in Dragon Con, actually, in the writer's track. So I went for it, and my short story, Jade's Awakening, was accepted. So from there, I made it into a novella. And the world for Jade is interesting because she was taking these herbs to suppress her powers, because her parents were basically supernatural fairies as well. And they were just trying to blend into the regular world and just make it just, you know, just kind of go on. But when she goes to an event, kind of like Dragon Con or Comic Con, a big convention, circumstances happen and she loses her pill and she shapeshifts. So she is a fairy, a half shapeshifter. So she has both. And during the series, she kind of wars with both sides. And at the end, she realizes that she is good, perfect, just as she is. And there's an exciting other character whom I love. I love all of my characters, but Bex, she's the evil fairy queen, who is such a delight to write about, because I got into fashion, which is part of my background as well. I was an assistant fashion designer. So I was able to just get into some details there, and, you know, it's fun writing about an evil character sometimes. But yes. So my fairies are large size, and they've got a bite to them, and there's lots of magic, and I just love the world.
Well, and you bring up something that I was going to ask about, which is when we look at the larger lore, whether it's something you used in your book or not, anybody who thinks fairies are like Tinkerbell and Peter Pan is really in for a big surprise, because they are ruthless as often as they're friendly, and you never really know what you're going to get. Did you find anything, again, whether you used it in the book or not, about fairies when you were researching, or just from other things you've read that have stuck in your mind about maybe the darker side of the Sidhe?
I'm a huge Anglophile, so I love all the different, folklore and mythology that they have developed, and all over Scotland, Ireland, the UK, all over. There's just so much rich mythology to explore there, and I kind of think that edge that you don't know what you're going to get is what makes it so much fun. And I also always seem to have a little bit of I'm always kind of sympathetic to them, because, it's like the natural world, they're the remnants of the natural world. And I feel, as, we've suppressed that, and they've reason to be mad, I think. But I have to say, Isabelle, having been to Dragon Con, your fairy would fit right in as her true self.
So the first night she actually shapeshifts and turns into a dragon at Dragon
Nobody
Con.
would even blink at Dragon Con. Been there, done that.
Right.
I've gotten poked by wings in the elevator more times than I can count. So
Oh, yeah.
yes, nobody would notice.
So much fun.
People would be coming up and going, great costume. Did you make
Yes.
it yourself?
I know.
Yes. How did you do that? Oh my
That's-
gosh. Yeah.
I actually have that as she's shifting. This guy walks by and goes, cool makeup. And she's like, "Rrr." But I can't wait. We have our tickets for this year. Rrr. So we love it.
Anybody else find some cool mythology while you were out there? Or well, since we were talking about the dark side of fairies, anybody happen upon any of those stories that whether you use them or not, just kind of stuck in your mind?
Well, in my world, I use, I always figure that if there's a lightness, there has to be a darkness that balances it. So I use a little bit of that as well with my fairy world. So there's the fairies that are happier and more compliant with, the characters, and then those that are there to cause trouble and to, exert maybe more of the forces of nature that are unpleasant. It's great for stories. The nice thing about like Scotland in particular is that I don't have to work very hard. The area that I'm writing in is the Isle of Skye, which has the fairy pools and all this fairy lore. It's like I really have to work to come up with some of this stuff, which is so great. But again, they've already if you take those folk stories or those folk tales and kind of dig deep into them, they're everywhere. They're in every culture. And so if you don't really like the culture that you're working in, well, go to a different culture, go to the Chinese culture, go to the Indian cultures, go to and mine those and see what they have. The names are different, but the positions are all the same.
Mm-hmm.
I find particularly in Scotland that they're based on gods and goddesses from Celtic, past. So it's so easy to write about fairies.
How about you, Isabelle?
For me, I did some research, but I also looked at just the human folklore, just of what we do. And sometimes we are just worse than the supernaturals that are out there. So one of the situations that Jade has to fight against is the faction, which consists of humans, and they're anti-supernaturals. So they get pretty ugly. Bex was inspired by a lot of different sides of people, different sides of myself. So I just had fun with it. She wants to be in control, and she wants to be head honcho when Jade comes up as a half shapeshifter, half fairy. So Bex finds ways to battle her throughout the series. So it's pretty exciting.
Now, Gerri brought up the idea of fairy pools, and there are so many things that go with the fairy legends. Fairy pools, the mushroom rings, the will-o'-the-wisp lights. What kind of elements like that did you pull into your stories, and what appealed to you about them?
Well, I can say that I have had a lot of fun researching different parts of the natural world in Cornwall, and I actually kind of link each of my pixies with a particular part of nature. So it might be like a sea thistle plant, or I have a dryad as one of my characters. I have and I have a rebel pixie who thinks nature is great and all, but she really loves to read. So she kind of bonds with a bookstore, a heroine who runs a bookstore, and that was really fun. But so I love doing that kind of research, and linking it all together. And they're often, I think, so many times they're tricksters, and so I've had I've had a pixie get very irate at a rakish young gentleman and curse him so that he can never kiss the wrong girl, the girl that he's meant for. So there's a lot of fun as he tries to kiss girls and things happen to prevent it. So it's just and I've used the darker side too. I have a villain who steals life force, as that's one of the mysteries, one of the old stories, and I use that in a villainous sorcerer kind of guy. So just like all writing, I think you just draw from what you see and know and read and hear and have fun with it. I haven't used a fairy pool yet, though.
My series kind of delves into the veil between the human world and the fae world. And so they do actually, in the series, there's one character that disappeared when he was an infant. And so we're going to explore what happened there. Of course, he went to the fairy world. And in the book that I'm writing right now, one of the characters needs something from the fairy world to make something happen in the real world. And so they're going to, on All Hallows Eve is when the veil is very thin. And so they're able to pass. There is a cave actually that's part of the MacLeod legend that's on their property that was the place that people pass through from one world to the next. So like I said, I don't have to work very hard.
For my book, there's I kind of blended some things from the Caribbean, and there's a moment when Jade has some dust from Hispaniola, which is Haiti and Dominican Republic, and she uses that dirt and she blows it, and it just freezes everybody. And I guess this might be similar to a fairy pool. There is also a moment in the book that Bex, actually in book 2, that Bex has a person who is deceased, I shall not say names, and she is able to summon him back up. But he's a little altered. But so that goes into the darker side. But I definitely wove in some information about trees and what certain trees can do, just nature, because nature is so part of fairy world. And for many other people, just regular people, we go back to nature. So I made sure to make nature part of my books, definitely.
Now, how about your fairies' appearance? We've had them, big and small. Are we talking, usually when you think of a fae, they can use glamour to hide their true appearance. But in general, at least the light fae, the good fae are always portrayed as being exceptionally beautiful, just the kind of person you can't take your eyes off of. Pointed ears, maybe not, but just somebody of exceptional beauty. How about your fae? How are they? Do they hide themselves? Are they, model handsome? Are they just regular Joes? What about it? Dive in, anybody.
I'll go first. Jade Delacour is beautiful. She has long curly black hair, and she's beautiful, but then so are the guys, including Shapeshifter too. So yeah, I had fun with that. And Bex is also the evil queen. She's also very beautiful and glamorous, with her dresses made of, one of her dresses has like butterfly wings attached to them, and they flitter and move because they're unfortunately alive still. So I know she's terrible. So yes, they're very stunning.
So my pixies look like their nature counterpart. So like I might have, my reading pixie, her name is Puff, and she's very akin to dandelions. So her hair is green and jagged and like the leaves of a dandelion. And so, you know, and I have and the most ancient and powerful of the pixies, his name is Tuft, and he is very, you know, rocky, granular, old guy, you know, that kind of thing. And I have like a sea lily, her hair is blue and looks like, you know, the leaves of a plant in Cornwall, that kind of thing. I have one based on mistletoe. You know, they all bear a resemblance to their natural counterpart, which is fun. I've had, yeah, you know, that's, you know, varied endlessly. So.
Mm-hmm.
And mine are beautiful too, but they're whatever they're linked to in nature usually is reflected in their physiology. So it might be the color of their eyes and the color of their hair, or they might you know, be drawn to that object. I use a lot of trees. But I haven't played with the idea of them you know, altering their images yet, but that could be fun to play with in the future.
Which leads into my next question, and that is that fairies have powers. And sometimes they use them for good reasons, and sometimes they use them to play pranks or to get even with people, or for their own purposes. What kind of magic have you crafted around your fairy world, and what are some of their powers and maybe some of their limitations? Anybody can jump in. Go for it.
Oh, okay, I'll start. So I've had a little bit of both. I have very powerful, like Tuft, my oldest pixie. He is very based in earth magic. He looks kind of like rugged earth. He's very strong in earth magic. My rebel pixie has not really connected with her magic, and that's one of her problems, and really one of the reasons, like so many of us, she escapes into reading. You know, so it's different for all of them, and that's been fun, and they're useful in different ways. You know what I mean? Some of them can, like the mistletoe is very into connection, you know, that kind of thing. So it's using that base, just, you know, it kind of frees your imagination. You can take it wherever you like, which is wonderful, you know, lots of fun, which is why I think it's one of the you know, draws of not only writing them, Faye, but reading them too, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Isabelle, how about the magic?
The magic is strong for Jade, and she balances her shapeshifter magic with her fairy magic. So in the beginning, she's a little bit more in tune with her shapeshifter magic. And as she learns more about herself, she learns that there's also power in her fairy magic. So that actually saves her and helps her go to the next level and eventually take over Bex's role as fairy queen.
How about you, Gerri?
My fairy world is still kind of evolving, but they have magic. Whether they choose to use it or not is another thing. And there's some that don't want to use it. They want to be human. There's ones that want to come in and create problems and use all the magic. And I have these big cast of characters, so you know, you have to vary it with what they can do. So I get to write the rules, and they just can't break those rules, which is great as an author. You build it in your world and make it be logical.
That is a wonderful thing that you get to make the rules. Go ahead.
So Gail, I was going to say, are you going to tell us about your fairy? Your fae?
Sure. I was saying before we got started that in all the years I've been writing, as both Gail, where I write epic and urban fantasy, and Morgan Brice, where I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, I've never really written about fairies or the fae. And this time I do have a story. It is in a, amazingly so, a box set collection of fairy tales retold as male romance. and it'll be coming out in April. Fables Retold, and mine is a retelling of the Three Billy Goats Gruff with goat shifters. So you have two goat shifters who fall in love. It's set in my Fox Hollow world, my Fox Hollow area, where shifters are just your next door neighbor. And one of them is a fainting goat that creates some problems. And one of them is a boar goat, which is a very studly, virile looking goat with big neck and, you know, horns, manly horns. And of course, they fall in love with each other. And I need to really clarify and say that the fainting goat is badass. He just does not take any crap off of anybody, fainting or not. It's sort of more like having low blood sugar or hyperventilating. He doesn't let it get in his way. And the fairies in this case, there's it's set in the Adirondacks, way up in the upper part of the Adirondack Park. And if you're familiar with that in upstate New York, there's a whole lot of forest and not many people, which makes it perfect for shifters. But it also makes it perfect for fae, who were there before everything else, and it's nature. And the fainting goat, who's a photographer, finds out about this island that is supposedly has a castle on it, some rich man's castle, but nobody has any pictures of it. And he's a photographer. And so he wants to go get the pictures. He can't figure out why nobody ever got pictures. Well, he goes, and there's a bridge to the island, except when he gets to the island side of the bridge disappears. And as it turns out, the only way to get him back from the fairies, it's really a fairy castle, is for his true love, his fated mate, to champion him against three of the fae, who, of course, since this is a goat story, end up being Krampus, Perkta, and Baphomet. So yes, it's a love story involving fainting goats and Baphomet.
And very Tamlin-ish, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, if you've read any of my stuff, that shouldn't surprise you. So that is my.
No, I love that. That's one of my favorite fae stories, Tamlin. That's a good one.
Yes. Well, and I just love the whole, your champion has to come get you. And of course, Joel doesn't wait around to be saved. He's doing stuff in the background too. But so that's my first foray into the fae. And in this case, they're the bad guys. But you never know. There's always a lot more room for other things, which actually leads into another question, which is, what stories about the fae or fairies that you have read or heard growing up or remember from books or movies, are there any that have come to your mind or influenced you or just got you interested in the whole idea of fairies to begin with?
That's a big question.
Well, I know one of the things that I found, I'll blather on for a little bit to give you time to think. There's a series of books called, each book is a different color cover, and there's like the gray fairy tales, and the pink fairy tales, and the blue fairy tales, and they're from cultures all over the world, but they're often very similar stories, but told within the experience of that culture. And I remember reading some of those. It's a huge series, so I never got through all of them, but I remember being so captivated, not only by all the magic and the supernatural creatures, but by the idea that, oh, wait, I read this story in the Irish fairy tales, but this is the Indian fairy tale book, and it's the same story, only, you know, the names are different and the food is different, and finding all those parallels was, you know, long before the internet, for people to find these things out, I always thought was really part of the fun.
So when I was young, one of my favorite series was the Chronicles of Prydain. I don't know if any of you guys know that one, by Lloyd Alexander. Disney did a bad movie on one of the books, which was the Black Cauldron. But it's a really lovely series. And it's about humans, but it's based in a lot of Welsh folklore, and they're moving and, you know, living their lives amongst all of the folklore, and so, like, just part of their everyday lives are magical fortune-telling pigs, and cauldrons that turn, that animate dead corpses into zombies, and that kind of thing. And there is a race of fae who are you know, involved in the story. So I think that's what influenced me in this series is my very historical couples are interacting amongst this magic around them, and I really like that. So I think that is one influence on me.
You mentioned the Welsh. One of the characters in my goat story, he's was raised in South Africa, but then his parents moved to England when he was in his teenage years. So he spent a lot of years in England. And his comment when he finds out that this problem that has kidnapped his boyfriend is the Fae is, yeah, in England, everybody understands about the Fae. They don't go, you know, there's a mushroom circle, you leave it alone. They know how to deal with it. Americans, they just go, hey, I'm just going to walk on in here. And he sees it as a cultural deficiency that we don't take the Fae seriously enough.
For me, my first experience with fairies was, I guess, in Peter Pan as a little girl. And I saw the fairies. I saw how Peter Pan, certain things seemed to be more developed in terms of character and storyline for me. When I saw then Tinkerbell, I was like, okay, I wanted more. I wanted more. So, you know, just as I got older, I saw different things. I discovered vampires, woo, and just, you know, I think everything that we see is just aspects of our own humanity. So, and the ugly parts of it too. So for me, I liked making my fairies and shapeshifters in this series very real and gritty, which I like. Yeah, full of mistakes as they learn how to go.
And I did a lot of reading as a child in what I read now, which is basically, you know, mythology from a lot of different cultures, and it was all very scary. I mean, the fantasy and those kind of things, they were all very scary. So when Disney comes out with, you know, 3 little teeny fairies and Cinderella, which none of the other legends of Cinderella, which appears in just about every culture in the world, have fairies in it. But you know, so again, it's the beautiful thing is that we can, you know, what we've read, what we've learned, what we've experienced, you can take that and put that into our writing and make it be that much more vivid and rich and resonate with other people that are reading it. Other people's worlds that they've built are different from our worlds, but it doesn't mean that they're not right. There's so much out there that, you know, it nods to certain things that are already out there, but it can be our own unique place. I want to read your books, Isabelle.
Oh, please. Yes. And I want to read all of your works. I've actually read some of it. So thank you.
And you know, Isabelle, you were talking about wanting more about Tinkerbell. They must have heard you because there's a whole series of Tinkerbell made for TV movies and videos from Pixie Hollow. Came after my kids were past that age, but I have a cousin who was that age. And some of them are real badass. You know, they're feisty, they're pirates, and they're
Yeah, I'm so happy. I mean, for the girls now, it's really rich for them now.
But they still have wings, you know, all that cool stuff, and it's a much more diverse cast, which is nice too. But yes, they have heard you, and there are fairies that aren't just kind of one-dimensional.
Right, and now they can actually have boys like those things. It's not just like I'm going to have a girl fairy. Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah.
I do like what Disney did with the Maleficent series, with, you know, looking at the darker fae and taking a evil character and showing her backstory. You know, it's like there's always backstory to all of our characters. Even our evil characters have this big backstory about why they are the way that they are. And I thought they did a really good job with that.
Speaking of that,
and you know, for the darker, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Speaking of that, Bex's story, although I finished my series, it's kind of like still in my head. So I'm going to, I think, create a series about Bex. I think being a maid somewhere in the Midwest and having to rise up to the challenge and defend her town from evil. So
love
I mean, I know she has so many flaws, but she has so many good things as well.
Yeah.
Those are characters that are fun to write.
Yeah.
I just love being able to take characters that we might have encountered in children's stories or young adult stories and bring them forward as we want stories that are different, or romances, or our action adventure, or our horror. And we can bring those types of characters forward into that, so we never have to stop loving the kind of character.
Mhm.
I know two of the authors that have done extended fairy worlds are Jim Butcher, when Harry Dresden gets stuck in the fairy realm for several books, and Laurel K. Hamilton with her Mary Gentry series. And those are pretty hard edged. Those fairies may be beautiful, but man, you don't want to turn your back on them. So what's next for you? Where are these series going? Are you planning more books that include the Fae? What's coming up next for you? And oh, Isabel's reaching for something. We want to see it.
I am. I actually I launched this book. Thank you. It's The Witch of Bellefleur. This came out last year. And I'm working on Midnight in Bellefleur. That's about a telenovela actress, a recent high school grad, who finds out that she is linked to being a lead witch. She can actually protect her hometown in South Florida. So she rises to the challenge and chaos ensues. It's a fun ride. And I just love the story. And I can't wait to share the second book with everybody in a few months. And my dream for that book, I will speak it, is for it to eventually be on the screen. So
Put it out there.
Oh, it sounds fantastic.
So my third Castle Kevner Pixie book just came out in January, and that's the one with the rebel reader Pixie. It's called Miss Pennick and the Pixie's Poem. And so that's out now. And actually my next paranormal project is in an anthology about witches in the Regency. So I'm looking forward to having fun with that, although I probably won't be able to resist adding a pixie or two.
Sprinkle them on as you know.
Yes, and my regular Regencies, of course, are still ongoing. I have a book coming out in June. The last book in my a series of unconventional courtships, which is I've had a lot of fun with that. A group of Regency gentlemen who are very resistant to marriage and just doesn't work out for them.
I have to ask, do your pixies have pixie dust like Tinkerbell? Do they?
They don't.
Do they bomb?
They do not have pixie dust.
It's hard to get that glitter out of things once it's there. How about you, Gerri?
Well, I just finished the witch series, All the King's Men. There's 5 books in that series where we basically explored the burning times in Scotland in the 15th century. And it was great to write, which is what I needed to write, something a little happier, not quite so brutal. So I started the Guardians of the Isle series, and I have so far 7 books planned in it. Book 1 actually comes out in February of 2022. It's called Return of the McLeod. Then in April 2022 comes Only a Highlander Will Do. And in June 2022, When a Highlander Gives His Heart. And every second and fourth and sixth book really feature the Fae. And then it kind of backs up a little bit. So we do like clan world and then Fae world, and clan world and Fae world. And yes, they're gonna mash and meet and get messy, but it's been really fun to write such a big cast of characters, and who knows what'll happen with it. I mean, it's, again, I just even with the lockdowns and things we've been experiencing, I really wanted to go to Scotland and do some research, and I wasn't able to. So I contacted the McLeod clan and the people that are in the National Trust with Dunvegan, and they were so great. They sent me all kinds of information, and they're so happy just to have, people writing about that area and those people. And so that's what I'm working on.
Awesome. Awesome. Everything sounds so good. I think we've all got books to look forward to and books to catch up on and new books to explore. So this is exactly, why we love talking about this. Let's make one more round and let everybody know where they can find you on social media so that they can find out about all these wonderful books. Isabelle?
You can find me at isabellehardestry.com and on Instagram at Isabelle H. Writes.
And Deb? My website is debmarlowe.com. I'm on Facebook, just at Deb Marlowe, and my Instagram is Deb Marlowe Writes. And I'm occasionally on Twitter. I do a lot of historical stuff over there. Mm-hmm. My Twitter, I don't think it's the usual experience over there. But those are my main places.
Very cool. Gerri?
You can find me at gerrirussell.net and on Facebook at Gerri Russell and on Instagram at Gerri Russell Author. Kind of the standard.
Okay. I'm pretty easy to find as gailzmartin.com and morganbrice.com. On Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the other sites, put in those names and you'll find me because I'm pretty easy to find. And of course, I'm usually here at Continual. Well, thank you so much for being with us, for sharing part of your evening to create the panel and for having a discussion about all your wonderful books. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. Stay tuned. We've got a lot more romance coming your way here on Continual. See you online.